Hello and welcome back to the Alex Witherow Show. Today I have a very special guest, Teresa Marshall de Paoli, who is the partner of deceased Marquess of Ailesbury. Teresa, great to have you here.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
So I want to first just kind of give our audience the heads up. I have known you all my life. You are, of course, my lovely godmother. I was born in London, but then moved to the States at a young age, in case anyone is confused about my Yankee accent. But today, I want to talk with you. We're under, the last year for you has been a very difficult time for you.
Horrendous, I would say.
Right.
Horrendous.
And I want to give you the chance today to really kind of explain your side of this. There's been a lot of media coverage about the death of the Marquess of Ailesbury, Michael Brudenell Bruce. Really, I just want to give you the chance and the opportunity to explain your side of things. I know you've said that the press coverage has been horrendously inaccurate. There's been a lot of different things that have been said, and we want to kind of correct the narrative on the record today. So obviously all of this started in the press when at Michael's funeral. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And at the funeral, I guess someone's granddaughter started a rumor saying that you had intentionally pushed Michael out of the second floor of your house.
Can you imagine at a funeral that the daughter of Michael's son would go around saying to people that I had pushed her grandfather out of the window?
Right.
Which obviously meant, because he was dead from the fall, that I had killed him, which was sort of the most horrific thing, to have to go through.
Right. So this kicked off a fury of media coverage. And you also have dealt with the police as well. So explain to me, first, just take me through the day when you found Michael in your home.
Yes, the day was just like an ordinary day. He did his thing, I did mine. But it was a very hot day, a very humid day. So he was sitting out on the patio, in the little garden, reading, and I was in the drawing room doing things to do with my charity work about animals, because my charities are all for animals. And we had a very late lunch, and I think it was around about 5 o'clock, so it was really a late lunch. We don't always feel to have breakfast on time and lunch at 1, and we just, when you're older, you don't feel so hungry all the time. You eat when you are hungry.
Right.
And so we decided then to have something to eat, and it was about 5 o'clock. So that's what we did, out in the sunshine with our little cat, Honeybun, and talking. It was just like an ordinary day. And then I left, tidied up, went back to the drawing room. I know this sounds all very boring, but it was just a very ordinary day, as I've said. And I left him on the patio. Now, being in the drawing room, I would have not known about him going upstairs or being in the dining room, which I made into a man's cave
Right.
for him. So he could have been in there. I didn't know. But the last time I saw him, obviously it was on the patio. So anyway, later on, when I go into the kitchen to prepare for supper, I then see him lying on the patio floor. So obviously I thought that he'd tripped over and that he was probably unconscious. So then I was, it was so frightening, to see him there with just a little bit of blood coming from his head.
Right.
I thought perhaps he was unconscious, or he obviously could have been dead. So I did take a cushion and I put it under his head, and then I covered him with a throw, and then immediately went to make phone calls, which included my stepdaughter and also obviously the police. And that was the start, which was so awful as well that I couldn't sort of go to him, and they wouldn't let me go to him or see him.
Right.
And then one of the police officers came back and said, "I'm very sorry, but Lord Ailesbury is dead." So that was such a shock, dead. I really did think perhaps he was unconscious, and that's why I went upstairs then to change, because I was wearing a caftan and I thought I'd be going to the hospital with him, and obviously he'd need an operation or something. So that was the start of that day.
So he basically, right. So
I didn't know the window was open, you see.
So was it determined that he tripped and fell on the patio, or did he fall out of the second floor?
Well, he obviously did not fall on the patio and trip, as I thought. Well, obviously, you leave someone on the patio and and they're now on the floor. I didn't think about the window, because we never usually had that window opened to that extent, except that it was this very hot day, so he must have opened it, obviously. But I didn't know that it was open. And we never had it open like that usually, because we have little animals that can get in. Squirrels, they so it was only left just a little way open so that none of the squirrels could get in. And to then find out that he'd fallen from that window and that it was opened was really quite a shock.
Yeah.
Because it was just like a normal day, and Lord Ailesbury did have dementia, but it was... It wasn't advanced or anything like that to Alzheimer's. In fact, he had the lowest form of dementia. I was told later that was 5 on the thing that they do. And he was quite strong, really. Tall and slim, all his own hair. I mean, he was very fit. Nurses and doctors used to say, "What kind of diet are you both on?"
Yeah.
And I always used to say, "I'm Mediterranean. I'm half Italian. My mother was Italian, and we don't have meat. We have chicken and fish.
Sure.
That kind of diet, really Mediterranean." So I think he was pretty fit, really, except for the this awful dementia.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. The press has run with this narrative on some level that, you may have pushed him out the window.
Well, I think it all started because of this little girl.
Right, at the funeral.
Who at the funeral went around telling several people, including one of my stepdaughters, that I had pushed her grandfather out of the window.
Right.
And then when the police, right from the start, I have to say, and even the person that did at the postmortem, and I can never remember the name, not pathologist.
The coroner.
No, that's like the court. The person that cuts you all open and does whatever they do on a dead body, and I can't remember the name. But she thought that it was suicide. They all seemed to think it was suicide, but I couldn't take that it was suicide, because I've dealt with people, helping people in the past, like a Samaritan, really, and I think I would have sensed there was something wrong, but it was just like a normal kind of day.
Right.
So I didn't sense anything at all.
So there was no indication that he was unhappy or anything?
No, nothing like that at all. Absolutely nothing. That's why it's really such a shock for me, to really even now take in. And then when all the police started arriving, they then came back to tell me and say that I'm sorry that Lord Ailesbury is dead, and I just went into total shock with that. That was really frightening. If someone's ill, if someone's got cancer, heaven forbid, and you're told about it and you prepare yourself. But like this, it was such a shock. And of course, I really did think he'd fallen over in the patio, and that's how he knocked his head.
Yeah.
So that was also a shock.
So the police have determined at this point that they ruled it officially a suicide. Is that correct?
Well, I didn't actually talk to the police about that, and they wouldn't let me go to him, which was also hard to take.
Right.
Because once I was told he was dead, I wanted to go to him. I wanted to go and hold his hand and talk to him and be with him. But of course, I couldn't do that. They
Right.
wouldn't allow me to do that. And at that stage, I had no idea that there was anything really wrong. It wasn't until you suddenly realise that when you can't go to the bathroom without a police officer taking you, and my daughter, who then had arrived, my stepdaughter who had arrived, and we were both told, you can't leave this room unless a police officer was with you to go to the bathroom, and they waited outside the door for you to come out of the bathroom and come back downstairs again. And they just wouldn't let me go to Lord Ailesbury. And so I think by that time I was really in a pretty bad state of shock. So was she, actually. She was exactly the same. But then in all, 31 officers arrived altogether. And then towards the later part of the evening, part of that 31 were 6 forensics, all in their white plastic outfits. And I guess then it seemed to me, and I think, oh my God, do they think I killed Michael? That's when I did say that. Do they? Because why are we now with forensics? And then we then knew that we were in a crime scene, and this apparently happens now. But we know now, but we didn't at the time, that if a man is found dead in his own home, the wife kind of automatically becomes suspect. And if it's the other way around, and it's a woman found dead and her husband's there, then he is the first person to be suspect, especially with a wound on the head, So that was a bit of a shock when that happened. So all through the evening, backwards and forwards, these officers were coming and going, and detectives, I think there were 2 or 3 detectives now involved. And my stepdaughter said, can my stepmother please go upstairs and lie on her bed? She's diabetic and this is terrible. And they said, no, she can't. You're going to have to stay. And this is how they talked to you, by the way, at the time. No, you both have to stay here in the drawing room. And if you do leave to go to the bathroom, an officer's got to be with you. And no, you can't go to me, they said, you can't go to Lord Ailesbury. So that was taken away from me as well, that I couldn't go and be with him and just talk to him and hold his hand because I couldn't accept that he was dead, It was such a shock, Alex, I can't tell you.
And you had been with Michael a long time. I met him probably 20 years ago.
38 years.
Yeah, you were with him 38 years.
More than he'd ever been married to any of his wives together.
Right, so he's had an active marriage history, right? So he had 3
Yes, he did have 3 wives before.
3 previous wives, right.
That is true, but they didn't really last that long.
Right.
I think the longest when he had 2 daughters in that marriage.
And you said something to me that was interesting. You said that the children initially thought that you were someone, Michael's children, that was trying to get the title of...
I think in the beginning, we talked about marriage, of course we did, but I think the daughters, more or less, one of the daughters said to me, I said, well, she's a bit abrupt, your sister. So she said, I think it's because of Papa being married, 3 times, and that, maybe, this one's after the title.
Right, the title
something
of
like that.
Lady Ailesbury.
That's right, yes.
Right.
So I said, well, I wasn't after the title, absolutely not. But I do understand after 3 marriages how you could think that.
And that's been a prominent narrative in the press that.
I was fake this and I was fake that and going around saying I was. But you have to understand, if he had been Mr., he used to call himself Mr. Bruce sometimes as well, funnily enough, but if he was Mr. Brudenell Bruce, I could have called myself Mrs. Brudenell Bruce because he did suffer from cancer. And so I was with him and nursed him all that time when he had the treatment of the cancer that he went through. So, I was with him all through that time as well. When you're dealing with someone that's ill, and he did have to have an operation as well for something else, you can't just ring up and when they say, "Are you family?" They won't talk to you unless you're family. So I did say, well, yes, I'm Lady Ailesbury, only at that stage. So doctors and consultants and our own doctors all knew the situation because when you're with someone for such a long time and you order things and and everything, you can't just be someone else. You've got to be the partner of the person you're with. It's just easier. It's not to show off. It's not to be grand. I never ever did that. Never. But we went to places where we were known. He was the Marquess of Ailesbury, and people, I think, thought that I obviously was his wife. And in fact, Lord Ailesbury used to say over something with the waiter, say, "Oh no, not for me, but you better ask my wife." There were certain occasions. We went to stay with a friend of his who had a most beautiful castle in Scotland, and with his staff there, with his friend's staff, I was his wife. Yes, my wife might want that, or my wife really loves the way the flowers have been done, something like that. You see, so he did that as well, and there's no way I would go around sort of trying to be grand, because Lord Ailesbury wasn't grand. Mm-hmm. This was his son that behaved like a 11th century lord. But Lord Ailesbury Michael never behaved like that. We were never sort of grand in any kind of way. Right. I can promise you that. And down in the country with the staff that we had, they said, "Well, should we call him my lord and my lady?" And I said, "Oh, no, good heavens, no. No, just say sir if you have to, or Lord Ailesbury, But with the name like de Paoli as well, I looked like an Italian servant or housekeeper, And so Lord Ailesbury said, when you have to deal with staff and people, there were gardeners and there was this and that. It was easier for me to be Lady Ailesbury, not to be sprauncy or be grand. No, because he wasn't. His daughters would tell you that. He was never that kind of person.
Very
the opposite to his son, not one bit like his son.
So tell me about, there's been this, obviously, all the press coverage that has covered this.
Oh, it's been terrible.
Well, it's very clear that this is a very complicated family. There's a lot going on. There's been legal battles left, right, and center. Tell me about just your history with the family, even when Michael was alive. I know you mentioned at one point.
I got on really with everybody. In fact, one of his daughters, who never really had any great love of her father, never really showed any great love of her father. And in fact, when he got a house in Fulham and left his lovely mews flat, didn't have room for two daughters. So he sold that and then got a house in Fulham for the two daughters to be there. Instead of moving in, she didn't. She just left and went to Australia. Mm-hmm. And she used to phone to talk to her sister, and I used to say, "Well, your father's here. Would you like to talk to him? Because Catherine won't be back probably until 12 o'clock later." So no. Didn't want to talk to her father, didn't want to have anything to do with her father at all. And
then David, he didn't really have a relationship with David.
I had no relationship with David, no. And especially Michael, after what he did. Right. You see, I've never really had hatred from anybody in my entire life. I've never had any bad friends or be with bad people until the son. And as soon as he knew that Lord Ailesbury and I were going together as a couple, he didn't like that. And so he rang up a very famous columnist called Nigel Dempster on the Daily Mail, actually. And he said the most awful things about me. I'm so worried about my father. This woman has duped him. This is all in the Daily Mail. I'm not making this up. I do not tell lies. And I'm very worried about my father and this woman. And she goes around saying she's Italian and she's in her 40s and blah, blah. Lastly, horrible things. Now, he'd never met me, didn't know a thing about me, but Michael knew everything. I told him about my past. He saw my photographs, pictures of me when I worked for ABC Television, when I worked, in Paris just everything. There was nothing really. He just knew everything anyway. So to read all of that in the Daily Mail, to try to break us up, because his father and he did not talk, and they haven't been, for donkey's years, maybe by a fax or something, but it was always something to do with the estate, that he had to sign something or discuss something, but no friendship there at all. Right. They loathed each other. The son loathed his father, and his father was very ashamed of him and loathed his son as well.
So this has been going on a long time.
A long, long time.
Yeah.
A long, long time. And that day, then we were kind of tricked to have this little girl come, which we were told she wanted to meet her grandfather. And I talked to Michael, and he said, yes, all right. And I said, apparently she's going to come with her mother. Her mother's bringing her, and not her father. So that was all arranged. And so the day came, and I opened the front door expecting to see the wife. It was him. It was the son.
Yeah.
And this little girl looking up at me, and it was, and he was standing there with a great big bunch of flowers. So I let them in, obviously, and I just carried it through normally. I don't know quite how, but I do. Like when you've been a model, you have to go out on the show. You do the show. Mm-hmm. I modelled for Mary Quant, who started with the first miniskirt, and also for Vidal Sassoon. I mean, this is part of my career, of course. Anyway, back to this absolute day of Michael later saying to me, why ever did you let him in? And I said, but what could I do? He's standing there. I expected her to be there, but it was him with a big bunch of flowers. So he said, well, I think you were magnificent. Those were his words. Magnificent, he said to me, to carry it through the way you did. Absolutely. But he didn't speak one word, not one word. But he told the press, oh, yes, I was with my father just 3 weeks before he died, which, of course, is true. And we were talking about that we'd like to come again, and hope we'd be invited again. All of that. But they never said a word. Yeah, and that little girl didn't pay any attention at all to her grandfather. Yeah. She talked and talked and talked. She's quite an amazing little girl, actually, for 10 years old. She said when she first came into the house, I want to look all over your house. Can I go and look all over your house? And it wasn't until afterwards that I thought, that's very strange for a little girl of 10 to come in. This is the little girl that did the rumour at the funeral, but want to go round the house. Maybe that he would have told her, go and see if you can see any paintings, any silver. I can't ever understand why she would have said that when she first came in. She ignored her grandfather, didn't take any notice of him. It was all really about her, but she is not 100%. I can't tell you what it is that's wrong with her, but she's not 100%. And this little girl said, I'm quite old-fashioned, really. So I said, yes, I noticed you keep on calling your father, father. So I said, not daddy and not papa. Or pa. So she said, yes, I am old-fashioned. I quite like the 40s. I like past times. Do you know Vera Lynn? So I said, I don't actually know her, but I know exactly who you mean. She said, oh, I like Vera Lynn. You'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when. And I started singing with her. We'll meet some sunny, sunny day. Well, of course. I mean, this is a 10-year-old child. Right. But there is something that, and I can't tell you what it is, but I mean, they're fully aware of this little girl and the way that she behaves and the way she is. which is very unusual because one of my stepdaughters was staying down there or visiting, but she doesn't live in London. She lives away. So she was with a hired car to go there. And this little girl had taken a knife or taken whatever and scratched this car. Fortunately, it wasn't her car, but it was a hired car, and she caused £500 worth of damage on that car. Mm-hmm. This is a 10-year-old little girl. So now you're beginning to get what this little girl is capable of. Yeah. She's not 10 years old. She's 10 years old going on 27 years old.
Right.
But I got on very well with her, and we got through that afternoon. But then, of course, to the press, oh, yes, I was with my father 3 weeks ago before he died. He looked remarkably well, didn't mention me, because I had a beautiful letter from him, beautiful letter. And I have to say that about 4 days later, he phoned me, and I told him what I thought of him.
Yeah.
As he left, the little girl and we sort of bent down, kissed, and I kissed him, peck, on the cheek as he went. And so he said, "Oh, you kissed me." I said, "Oh," I said, "that was the kiss of death for what you did to me and your father, all those years ago."
Yeah, so talk to me about that. There's been, you've mentioned, obviously in the press, it's been very clear that there...
Horrible things.
Well, there's been a lot of legal battles in this family already.
Yeah.
You mentioned that they had the NHS send health workers to your home many times to check on Michael.
Yes, the son-in-law phoned up all the health people in London and our practice, where the doctors are, telling them that he was very concerned about his father-in-law and that he wasn't being treated properly, that I was abusing him. I only found all of this because when it came to the inquest, I was sent bit by bit. It's like a bundle of letters and everything. Everything is with the coroner. And they wrote terrible letters about me to the coroner as well, which of course I did get and I did see, which probably they didn't expect me to ever see, but of course I did. And it was mainly the son-in-law telling everybody that they were worried for his welfare, that I didn't treat him properly, I didn't feed him properly, and he was unhappy here. And he was only happy when he visited them and the other daughter. It was just completely ruining my whole character, the very me as a human being who's always helped and nursed other people, and it was really cruel. And then people have said that was abuse of an older person. I'm 90 years old in a few days' time. 90, not 19, 90. And for me to have spent the last 10 months with these people doing their best to have me arrested, and they are so upset that they didn't get what they wanted. They wanted me to be arrested for being assisted suicide.
Right, and that was never determined.
No. And I think the coroner really saw through them with the letters that had been written to him, with their behavior and how they were.
So the family had pressured the coroner and the police to really convict you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In their letters, everything was like how awful I was, how worried they were about him. But that's what the son had done 38 years ago to Nigel Dempster.
Right.
But of course, I had Lord Ailesbury, I had Michael behind me to protect me at that time. And of course, we dealt with a lawyer and Queen's Counsel that it was in those days. And it was all a load of nonsense. And in the end, I had a full apology on Nigel Dempster's full page, not at the back. I didn't want it, pushed away somewhere. So I've got that, And probably, I don't know whether they want to be nasty against me, because I did win that case, and I did win quite a lot of money from them, because it was all lies. It was all lies. But he's known.
So a defamation case.
Definitely, yes, absolutely. But you see, he's who's a person that lies all the time. What do they call them?
Maybe a sociopath.
Something liar. But he's known for that.
Yeah.
He does it. In fact, he believes, I think, that his father removed him from Eton, where he was for about 5 minutes, because he lied, he disrupted the little boys, and he stole from the little boys. And this I was told from a close member of the family, as well as seeing it in writing in a letter, which unfortunately I, at the moment, haven't come across. Well, we've moved, and it's been really so hard. I'm now coming across certain things as well, out of the blue, but I've been in such a poorly state with all the shock of this. It's been very, very hard for me.
What do you think of
his father removed him, though, because he was going to be expelled from Eton, expelled. And in the letter from the people at Eton said, because of how he was, they were going to expel him. So Michael didn't want that, because that would be awful to go on his resume or whatever, and so he decided he would immediately remove him, and that's what he did. But I think the son has always thought that his father did it for some reason, but why would he have done it? Of course he wouldn't. He was not a spiteful, nasty man. He would never have done it, but he did it for David. He did it so that he wouldn't have that, and when he's written about in newspapers, old Etonian this, old Etonian that.
Right.
But you see, that is the truth, and that is the background. I mean, I go into a court tomorrow and swear on the Bible everything I'm saying to you is absolutely the truth. Alex, I wouldn't be here with you if it wasn't. I don't need to make stories up. I don't need to fantasize. But I had one person that did fantasize about me in a magazine, actually. That's another story.
Let me ask you, of all of the coverage you've seen on this story, I mean, what have been the most egregiously incorrect narratives that you've seen so far?
Most of it. Most of it.
Right.
I can't tell you. After the inquest, they had one of my stepdaughters with the man that she's been with for quite a long time. They're friends, great friends, and called him the name of the son-in-law. And then they had the son of Michael, with a stepdaughter, and they put the stepdaughter as his wife.
Oh,
they get all the mixture and all the names and everything.
The family members, details, all
wrong. Everything wrong. And the police, too, got a lot of things wrong. Absolutely, the police did. It was written in some of the stuff that I got back from the coroner's bundle, as they call it, and I mean, they just said unbelievable things. The police even said things. They said, "Oh, yeah, she rushed up the stairs to close the window." Well, I didn't know the window was open, and I'm 90 years old, for God's sake. I haven't rushed up the stairs, since I was 12 years old or something. And then another police officer had said something else about me going upstairs. But in that, I didn't rush. I did something else. It was like, they got a lot of things wrong. And then they said that she opened the door and closed the door of the kitchen to let the cat out. No, I didn't open and close it. It was a boiling hot day. It was humid. The patio door to the kitchen was open all day, all day. At the very, very end, when a detective said to me, "Teresa, it's no longer a crime scene." So he said, "You can now go." And this was the next day. And Lord Ailesbury had been left out on the patio from when he was found dead, which was probably he'd probably been there for about an hour. So he was there when he died, obviously at 6 o'clock, probably around that time. till the next day after 2:00. And I couldn't go to him until after 2:00 that next afternoon, to be with him. There were 2 young officers left by then. And so I said, oh, my God, the blood. Oh, my goodness, it's all congealed. And the officer said, yes, it's very hard to remove because it goes almost like cement, it was so stuck. So, and I said, oh, and it's all covered in blood. And there was blood from his nose and blood from his ears. And the officer said there's about 2 pints of blood, nearly 2 pints of blood, because he'd been left there all that time.
Right.
And from the wound on his head. So I said, oh, I can't leave him like that. So I got a bowl of water, soapy water. I put my rubber gloves on. And so the officer said, no, you don't have to do that. They'll do that when they get him, at the other end, at the mortuary. So I said, no, I don't want him to go looking like that. I want him to look like Michael. And so I washed all his face and did all of that, pushed his hair back and everything. And then I said, all this blood here. And he said, don't worry about that. We'll do that. We'll do. I said, no, I'll do it. You go. You go. You've been here and you've been very kind to me. But I said, I'll do that. And that's what I did. And the next day I rang our handyman who I'd had him working for about 10 or 11 years. And I said, could you hose down the patio? Because it's very hard to get all of Lord Ailesbury's blood. And that's what he did. I'll never get over this, ever. And to have those 3, they know who they are. Those 3 say all the wicked things that they said and things to the press about me, about all the health people, to have them come without being announced, saying that I wasn't treating him properly, doctor arriving at the door and saying, oh, we didn't have an appointment, did we? No, did they not ring you? And then another time, oh, I thought they'd written to you. No, we didn't know. But anyway, you're here, so please come in. Because these doctors and everybody else were being told that I was abusing him. That was the word written in the letter, abusing him, worried again for his welfare, not feeding him properly, not doing this. They hadn't been in the house for 3 years. How would they have known anything?
So you're being harassed by the family for a long time.
Oh, yes. And my grandson knows that.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all... my grandson.
And did Michael say? I mean, was he frustrated by this as well?
Yes.
With all
yes.
Yeah.
And I was saying, the grandson, first of all, was there one day, and so Michael said to him, "Why do they keep on coming here? And they keep on asking us the same questions. Am I happy? Am I all right? Have I eaten today?" Because they were all being told that he spent most of his days in bed. In bed, and all these lies, they blackened my character. They made up their minds. They wanted to get me arrested for murdering him. That's what they were trying to do. They worked and worked for 10 months, trying. They wrote terrible letters to the coroner, and it's been, I don't know how I'm still standing. I've been treated now for post-traumatic stress to get through the last 10 months, because the shock of that happening, and then having that little girl going around at the funeral, my dear, to say that I'd pushed him through the window, well, obviously I'd killed him. And they've worked on that for 10 months. They even came around. I can't tell you which person it was, I don't know, but somebody came with a pair of little step ladders to get up on it to take photographs of the back of the next door person's house, to try to get a photograph of the window where he fell out of. But they couldn't because of all the greenery, and they couldn't. But they took pictures, I mean, of the next door neighbour's house. Can you believe that? I mean, that's disgusting. And they wanted to get a picture of the bedroom and the bedroom window. That's what they wanted to get. And of course, couldn't. They just couldn't. So they went to the estate agents who had lots of estate agents in the road, a lot of people dying, a lot of people in homes going. And so I talked to the people and I said, do you put a picture out when you want to let your house and the rooms and things, of the bedroom, of any of your rooms? And they said, yes, we do. There is a picture of the bedroom, which is the same bedroom as my bedroom. Now it's a guest room, but it's still Michael's bedroom. And that's how they got the picture of the window. But the window was not the Victorian window. It was a modern window. So they didn't even get a picture of the right window. It was modern. It was one that was still at the bottom, that didn't move, but you could push the top of the window out. It was a new window. Right. I've still got the Victorian window of 18 tiddlywinks. But the thing is, it had new cords put in it, pushing it up and pushing it down. And then they said, oh, with that window, thinking it was still like the Victorian window, Lord Ailesbury was very frail, and I don't see how he could possibly have pushed up that window. It must have been pushed up, in other words, by me. Which, of course, was also very cruel and very hurtful. But someone who represented me at the inquest took a picture, and so did the housekeeper, of him as well, pushing up that window with one finger. With one finger, he pushed up the window. So you see all of this, the lies and everything that's been told, that he wasn't strong enough to push up the window and all of that. Nobody knows what I've been through. Yeah. Nobody.
Let me ask you this: there's been a big financial fight in the family as well.
Oh yes, lovely people.
Is that still going on? And that has been going on for. I mean, this family is riddled with financial lawsuits. How has that affected you?
I've been on suicide watch. That's how it's affected me. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can check that out. I was dealing with someone who came in to see me every week, and then afterwards was calling me every week, and I had to swear to her. And I said, look, I won't say her name, but I mean, I've got it if you needed it. And I said to her, I can't promise you that I'll never kill myself. But I can tell you this, I swear to you now that I won't do it before the inquest. Because I think if I did, then they'd all say, oh, she killed herself. That's because she killed Michael, and she couldn't face anything. So there's no way I said I will kill myself before. Mm-hmm. But then I don't know in the future. I really do not know, because all our friends have died. All of Michael's friends that we knew together, and things that he knew, obviously people before him, except for one I've got left who's a dear, dear friend I've known for 30 years. She is still in Wiltshire, and a wonderful friend. And she wrote the most wonderful letter about my character to the coroner, as did the carer who came in twice a week. You can see that letter. I can show that letter to you, which was wonderful. And my stepdaughter, one of my stepdaughters, wrote the most wonderful letter as well to the coroner. So I did have them, thank God, on my side. But to have three members, important families, because one was a daughter, the other was a son-in-law, and the other was Michael's son. Mm-hmm. And, and these are people, first of all, the daughter who went to Sydney and then eventually came back and didn't really want to have anything to do with her father. But again, I got them together. And then, of course, she needed her father, because then she was getting married and she obviously needed him to pay for the wedding, which, of course, he did. But she also came over to the house one day. Hadn't been there for 3 years. It was Michael's birthday. I had made a tea, an English tea, with scones and jam and the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And my other daughter had got me some candles, so I'd put candles on the cake and everything. Anyway, I was upstairs at the time, and when I came down, I could hear a voice, and I thought, oh, that sounds like this person. The door was closed. Anyway, so I opened the door, come in, and she is sitting there talking to her father. Well, it's his birthday, but she hasn't bothered about him. She's never come over to see him. And so I said to her, oh, I said, it's lovely to see you. You know you're welcome to come here any time. And I said, but I wonder if you could phone first, if you could just let us know first. She got up from the chair and she said, F you. I said, I beg your pardon, F me. I said, well, F you. Wait a minute, I'm going to film you now. I'm filming you. So I said, well, film this. Get out of my house. And she turned round and she went. Now, my grandson wanted her arrested because she actually, when she got up, she pushed me, she closed the door, pushed me into the hallway, pushed me literally out of my own little drawing room, closed the door and put her body against the door of the drawing room. So I couldn't get back in. So this is all going on up at, with the stage of FU and get out of my house, finally. And then she left. So my grandson said she should be arrested because that's assault. She's touched your body, she stopped you and pushed you and held her body against the door and wouldn't let you. And he did tell me that he had reported it to the police. But I said, look, I don't want to have her arrested for assault. No, I didn't want to do that. I'm not a bitchy person. I'm not made like that. It just isn't my character to be like that. So I stopped him from doing it. But he did tell me that it would be on record about what she had done. So nobody knows any of this, but I'm telling you my story and what I've been going through and what kind of people I've been dealing with. These are not good people. These are bad people.
I know you've mentioned that there has been press coverage in specific social magazines that has been just wildly wrong.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
The person that I think you mean, who wrote several pages in this Society magazine, took over a lunch that I was having with a friend of mine, also a journalist, actually, who did a most lovely write-up about Lord Ailesbury and myself, because he really is an excellent, very well-known journalist. And I sort of had great respect for him. That's why I got involved with him in the first place. But this person, who was a so-called friend of mine, took over the lunch because he was reporting on Ascot and so couldn't make the lunch, but told me she would be thrilled to go to where we were having lunch. And so I said, fine, I haven't seen her for about, 5 years, but we were, great chums. Not sister friends, but we were friends. We used to have lunch together. She'd pay, I'd pay. I gave her a most beautiful cocktail outfit, which today would be worth quite a bit of money because it was all beaded down to the floor. It was a coat, but you could wear it as a dress. It was quite exquisite, actually. And she thought I was loaning it to her for a special occasion. But I said, no. I'm giving it to you because I don't really go to these kind of things like we used to. And so, no, I said, I want you to have it. That's really how close we were. So it was lovely. She also had said to me, I've met a really lovely guy and I'm hoping that we will, get married. And I said, oh, that's so thrilling, lovely, blah, blah. How did you meet? This, that, and the other. And then she said, I'd love you to come and meet him. Would you come sometime to meet him? And I said, yes, of course, I'd love to. And so about a week, 10 days later, she invites me there for supper to his beautiful flat, which is not that far away. And so there I go, and I meet him, lovely guy, really super guy, and we have supper and laughs and everything together. I talked to him about this, that, and the other, and we all got on terribly well. I'd arrived there with a lovely champagne and a beautiful big bunch of flowers. And that's how friendly we were, you know. And then, of course, I left to be mainly in the country for 17 years down in Wiltshire. She then got married to this lovely guy. And so it was lovely to be able to see her again after about 5 or 6 years. We hadn't seen each other, you know. So I've known her really quite some time. And then after all that she wrote in this magazine about me, well, I had a call from Sylvia, one of my stepdaughters, and she said, "You cannot believe what this so-called friend of yours has written in this thing." Right. I was so shocked, I couldn't believe it. Oh, and then somebody else, another stepdaughter, she was so cross and so angry as well. And she wrote to her straight away. And she did, because I asked her to send it to me, the email, to make sure that she really had, because I've lost a lot of trust in people now with all of this.
And you felt like you were somewhat tricked into that lunch.
Tricked.
Yeah.
Well, no, I wasn't tricked into that lunch. No, I wasn't. I was tricked into having the son come there with the little girl. That was a complete trick. No, but because the table was booked, you know, for this friend of mine who had done this wonderful article about Lord Ailesbury and me, before, it would have been wasted. So when he said, well, she says that she'd love to go to the Ritz. So I said, did she? And so I said, oh, well, then I won't cancel it then, you know, because it can take time to get bookings there. So I said, yes, I haven't seen her for ages. So, yes, of course. So that's what happened. She came to the lunch I should have had with Richard, the journalist that did this lovely article about Lord Ailesbury.
So that was changed last minute.
Yes, yes, absolutely. But she treated it as if she was like in interviewing me.
Right.
She told me very, very personal things that she should not have told me. Girly lunch. And went like this. Button, you don't ever say anything about it. And I said, no, of course I wouldn't. And then I was told her, even though I was in a state of shock, she was my friend, you know, that I'd been friends with, but quite closely. And so I said, you won't believe what I've been going through. I said, my darling, I can't tell you what happened with this little girl at his funeral to say such a thing. I mean, I told her as a friend.
Right.
But then she puts it out. She goes ahead and she prints it about, you know, and she contacts the son. Well, the son loves all of that because he gets paid. He gets paid for it. And so, you know, she printed it all in that magazine, and it was just garbage what she had written, lies. She wrote that, she told me that she danced with 3 kings, but when I asked her the names of these kings, she couldn't even tell me. It's, you know, you've got the magazine, you've read it. I'm not making it up. I don't make things up, don't need to. And she had said that I danced with 3 kings, but she couldn't tell me the name of one of them. Well, can you imagine? If I had ever danced with a king, I surely would know the king I danced with. And I said to the magazine when I rang up, when I said, you owe me an apology because all of this is absolute nonsense. And I said, yes, I've danced with the Marquess, a count, even a prince, but I've never, ever, ever danced with 3 kings in my knowledge. No, I haven't. I mean, a lot of stuff, and the pearl necklace, and she wore pearls the size of marbles or something, and diamond rings on every finger. I thought, and then she prints the address. She might as well just have put the number on it as well. Everybody's got the address. I had people in cars, press in the cars, sitting there, questioning my handyman and questioning the housekeeper. They don't talk to the press. I didn't tell them not to, but they know very well they wouldn't dream of it. And if I had treated him so badly and so awful, why didn't the carer report me? Why didn't she say, look, I only see Lord Ailesbury twice a week, but I'm very concerned because he looks very frail. I don't think he's been fed properly. I mean, she would have reported me, surely, wouldn't she? Mm-hmm. And what about the housekeeper? She said to the coroner, I have never seen Lord Ailesbury when I've been there in bed or lying on the bed, till that one day when putting the shirts back, he came out of the bathroom with his trousers down and then lay on the bed. That was the only time, she said, I saw him on the bed. I've never found Lord Ailesbury. She said, in 10 years I've been with Teresa and Lord Ailesbury, never seen him in bed. He's always dressed. He's always made beautifully. He wears his lovely eau de sauvage, Dior aftershave stuff. And no, I mean, so they made me out to be this rotten, horrible person. And funnily enough, some of the playbacks that came from people in Australia, then there was somebody in New Zealand, and they kind of, instead of hating me and saying what a dreadful woman this woman sounds, they were going against him and saying, he was going on about this trumpet. Yes, because he blackwashed his father and said his father stole, that his father was a thief. That was in the paper. How dare he? Let me just tell you that when someone takes over and becomes a Marquess, and now you're in charge, you can sell whatever you want. It is yours legally to do.
In terms of land?
Well, land, house.
Let me ask you, how would you, I mean, you were with Michael for a long time, for 38 years. 38 years. I mean, how would you characterize your relationship with him in that time?
I don't think you could ever say this, but I think it would be a bit like Camilla and Charles. I think it's sort of like your mother and lover. And Michael's mother was treated very, very badly by the father. And so Michael, as a little boy with his brother, would have, I'm sure, seen his mother crying or them arguing, and she was begging for a divorce. But the father would not give her the divorce. And he showed her no love, no attention, maybe when they first got married. But no, after the children were born, i.e. he had the heir and the follow-up. And he completely changed. He had his own aeroplane. He'd fly off. He drove racing cars and that. So she was completely, and I have got the letter that says all of this from her brother or stepbrother. Can't quite remember now. It's brother or stepbrother anyway. I had a knock on the door from some other journalists. I did not want to talk to them, but they put a question to me that I felt had to be answered. And this person said, look, we're doing an article about Lord Ailesbury with his son. And I said, I really don't want to talk about any more, please, And they said, but we just want an answer. So I said, what do you want to know? Well, the son says that you didn't allow him to go and say his last goodbyes to his father in his coffin. Did you stop him? Is this true or not? And then they could see it was getting me a bit upset. So they said, look, we'll come back. We'll come back in half an hour. So in that half an hour, the housekeeper had arrived. And so I told her. So she said, well, I think you should tell them. I'm here now, she said, so they can't sort of say something that's not going to be true or make anything up like the others have done. I'm here. So I decided to let them in, photographer and the actual guy himself. So I said, you asked me that question. I said, I'm not the sort of person that would ever stop their children from ever saying their last goodbyes to their parents. But I said, in this case, it is true. I did. So I said, and the reason I stopped it was because the son had stopped his father from being removed from the morgue so long that his father's body was decomposing. And by the time the lawyers got involved, because he kept on saying he was the executor of his father's will, but they didn't know what to do because they'd already been told that I was the executor of the will. So they had to sort that out.
And you were, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Both wills.
Yeah.
I didn't know. He didn't ask me. He didn't ask his members of his family. No, didn't ask anybody else, but didn't tell me. But he trusted me, obviously. We loved each other. We were together all that time. He didn't ask a member of his family or a friend. He asked me, his partner. And that's what it said. I want my partner, blah, blah, blah. I'm his partner. Sometimes I'm his wife. Yes. Not me making it up. And that's what I told them. And I said, I did him a favour. I did the son a favour, because what he would have seen was decomposed face with a smell that the funeral people told me they used half a bottle of Old Spice. And I said, oh, my goodness me, Old Spice. I didn't know they still made it. They had that. That was the only thing a man had in those days in the 50s, because they didn't have all the paraphernalia that they have today. So she had told me, the head of the funeral people, that that's how much she'd used, because of the smell. Because of the son holding it up while it was sorted out that he was, in fact, not the executor, but letters, the copies of the will, everything. And that's why his body went off. And so I told this particular journalist, and I said that was the reason. So really he should be thanking me, because what he would have seen would have been a melting face with a smell that you would have need to spray perfume around it.
Right.
And I said, and in fact, that was why I said no to him seeing his father, because he would be a hypocrite, because he hated his father. He loathed his father, and has called his father a thief to the press about the horn that Michael sold. He probably needed some money at the time. And when you are who you are, and you now take over, you can sell whatever you want.
Right.
It's not against the law. It's perfectly legal. But to say my father was a thief and say that to the press, and the press printed that my father was a thief and he sold something, he had no right to do this, he had no right to do that. He lied about his father. It's not just me. He lied about his father. Well, he can say what he likes about me. I don't really care anymore, but I won't have all that said about Michael. No, I just won't. And I think I did do the right thing. And the daughters understood that in the end. Yeah. Because one of the daughters said, he so wanted to say goodbye. And I said, well, he should have thought of that over the 38 years that he's not had anything to do with his father. Even wanted to take his father to court to sue his father about the colour of the house on the estate. And I said, don't forget, I said, your father spent $50,000 doing it up. It wasn't fit for purpose. And he could have given us a better house, because Michael stupidly handed everything over to the son. He was a stockbroker, Michael. He was more caring about being a stockbroker than running an estate. He wasn't interested. I think Harry's right. I don't think a lot of these heirs welcome taking over and being who they are. I'm sure if Prince Charles had a choice, he'd rather just be at Highgrove with Camilla and not be king. And I think Harry also, if he could just be plain Harry, and give up the titles, I think he'd be happier. It's just that a lot of these people are landed with these titles and they just have to carry it through and be it. I think William would probably be the same. I don't know, but I think he's very much a country type of man, and she's lovely. She's divine. Catherine, the wife. They're a wonderful, beautiful family, and I think they'd just be happy to be like a country family, really. But he's got to take over and be king one day.
Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you feel like you need to clear the record on?
Well, I've cleared it about one stepdaughter, unofficial, of course, but I'm still their stepmother. And with one daughter, she always introduces me, in that way. I'm always Lady Ailesbury. It was so much easier to be Lady Ailesbury. And as I said, if it was Joe Bloggs, I'd have been Mrs. Joe Bloggs, because you can't deal with certain things unless you are family. So, and anyway, my grandson chooses to be my grandson, and said so at the court thing that we had. And he said, she is my grandmother. She's like a grandmother. My grandmother died, and so they're my grandparents. He actually said that to the coroner.
And there had been discussion about getting married at one point with Michael.
Well,
right?
we did at one stage, yes, because I mean, he's used to being married, and it would be quite a big step for me to have got married, because I've turned down quite a few people in the past. That I probably should have married, but never did. No, I didn't want. I don't know why. My independence was my independence, and I wanted.
So it was really your idea.
I wanted to prove to those girls that I wasn't after. The ones that said that another one kind of thing after the title. That I wasn't after the title.
Right.
And then when I got deeply into the relationship and discovered one or two things, I thought, I'm writing a book, for God's sake. I've got this to do. I've got a job that I've got to do. I don't really need all of this, and I think perhaps, it's been lovely, it's been very nice, but maybe I should call it a day. And I told him. And then he said, you can't leave me. And I said, why can't I? And he said, because I love you. I love you. I don't want you to leave me. And then, I don't know, with this and that, and I softened. And then I thought, this poor man, he's like a man boy, a man baby. And he sort of, I just felt he needed me. Mm-hmm. I know it sounds strange, but I've always thought that about Camilla, whatever people might say about Camilla. I'm not crazy about how she behaved. I'm not crazy about the Pope seeing them. They both committed adultery, for God's sake, And then I don't know, that's another story. But I just felt... I didn't want anybody to think I was marrying him for the title. For the title, right. No. Yeah. But unfortunately, had to use it at certain times, of which I've already explained to you. Yeah. So I don't think there's anything else. There's been so much that's been written, I can't keep up. But I'm so against anything been saying about Michael, about him being a thief, and there was something else as well, which also was a lie about him. And that upset me. Yeah. There's just so much that's been written. But anyway, the fact was, with the last person that I did give an interview to, which was with the Times, he did exactly tell the truth about why I had said that he couldn't meet his father and say goodbye. Why would he? It would be a hypocrite saying it, wouldn't it? Because he hated his father, and they never had anything. Trying to take your father to court because of the colour of the paint of the house that we were given.
Let me ask you this: you were made, I guess, executor of his will 2 or 3 years ago, right?
No, longer than that. Because it was the other will. Yes, whenever the other will was.
So this was because I know
this is not new.
Yeah, this wasn't. I read in some article that it was only 2 years ago, so that's incorrect.
Yes, so absolutely.
Was it like 10 years ago?
Well, most of what you had in the paper was incorrect. You see.
Yeah.
But I had to talk to the Times on that matter because I thought. To be known as a person that refused a child, a grown-up man, as it happened, not to say goodbye to his father, would I ever? Anybody who knows me, would know I would never do such a thing like that. Of course, it wouldn't be in me to do such a spiteful, bitchy thing. Why? Why would I do such a thing? Of course I wouldn't. But it was simply because he hated his father. He tried to take his father to court to sue him over the colour of the bloody house, this, that and the other. He's called his father a thief for stealing the horn and stealing this, which is absolutely not true. And I think anybody in my place wouldn't have allowed him to say his goodbyes to his father. But the reason was because of the smell and because of the face had... Right. Well, it wasn't his face anymore. And even in the church, the lovely woman who organised all of the funeral, I don't know it's her business anyway. And, she wore this beautiful outfit with a top hat and everything, to lead into the grounds. He wasn't buried actually in the vault. He didn't want to be in the vault. He wanted to be above ground. And so he didn't want to have a ceremony either in the church. He wanted it to be by the grave outside in the garden. And that's exactly what happened. And so in the church where he was, with a photograph next, we had, understand, and a candle. I did the candle. And when she came over to me, the head of the funeral, I gave her the eau de sauvage, the Christian Dior, and she sprayed all of the coffin with the Christian Dior. Well, I don't know. Honestly, I can't tell you how I'm getting through every day. I do not know, because I'm not used to being on my own. And the fact that all our friends have died, I've got one person who you know of, but she lives in America, and the one person that's down in Wiltshire, and they've been wonderful to me, absolutely wonderful.
Well, Teresa, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Thank you for listening to me. I'm sure most people have turned off by now, and it sounds bloody boring or something. Sorry.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us. This has certainly been insightful, clearing up a lot of different narratives that have been in the media.
Yes, unfairness, lies, all of that. It's been very, very unfair, very unfair.